A new book reveals Queen Camilla was the target of an attempted indecent assault when she was a teenager. She fought off her attacker, according to the book, with the heel of her shoe. The account appears in Power and the Palace by former Times Royal editor Valentine, who says Camilla shared the story with Boris Johnson when he was mayor of London.
Well, the Queen has never spoken out publicly about this attack. She prefers to focus on survivors of domestic and sexual abuse, which, of course, she has supported publicly for many years. Well, we now know, as we discussed on the programme yesterday, that the Queen herself, Queen Camilla, was the subject of an indecent sexual assault when she was a teenager. And the person who revealed that is Valentine in this new book, Power and the Palace, and he joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, this was explosive when it came out yesterday from your book, which is not yet published, comes out in a few days' time. How did you find out? And what were the details of this attack that you were able to report?
Well, I found out because I was interested in exploring the relationship between politicians and the royal family, and in particular, Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson's relationship with the royals is up and down, should we say. And I was talking to someone who used to work for Boris, Guido Harry, used to do his PR when he was mayor of London. And Guido told me about their first encounter. Boris had become mayor of London. He was invited for tea at Clarence House by Camilla. She thought he looked great fun. And they got on like a house on fire. They both really liked each other. But there was also a serious element to the conversation. They talked about domestic abuse and sexual violence and that sort of thing because Boris was setting up some rape crisis centres around London. And Camilla told him that as a teenage schoolgirl, she'd been on a train to London, and on that train, someone started molesting her. Didn't go into details, but we don't need to know the details. It was obviously an upsetting incident. And Boris, obviously, was absolutely agog at this and said, well, what did you do? And she said, well, I did what my mother taught me. I took my shoe off and whacked him in the nuts with a heel.
Yes, I used the word privates yesterday.
Nuts is fine.
Yeah, but this is extraordinary. And it's a revelation about something that happened to Queen Camilla, which then, did Boris Johnson think that's part of what fuels her in her campaigning work?
I don't know if Boris thought that. I know Guido Harry thought that, and possibly he thought that because Boris thought that. But I don't think it does. I mean, I think that trivialises it. I think Camilla has heard...
I don't think it trivialises it to suggest that if you've experienced something, you then want to campaign to protect other women.
I think she wants to campaign because she's heard a lot of testimonies from women. She's aware of the problem, and it may have had a role, I suppose, but I don't think it's the root cause of her sincere belief that this should be dealt with.
Also, there is a protocol, isn't there, Valentine? And you'll be so aware of it as a royal correspondent. When you're told things by the royal family, you keep them private. And there is also a legal protocol that when someone is the victim of a sexual assault, that those details aren't revealed. So how did you get to the position where you were able to publish this story? Well,
there are two things there. First of all, why did Guido Harry tell me this? I can't answer that. Maybe he thought time had passed, maybe he thought it was harmless. And in terms of publication, obviously, I thought long and hard about it. I spoke to the lawyers for the publishing company, and obviously I spoke to Buckingham Palace. I think Camilla's attitude is a pragmatic one. She believes, well, first of all, she's not haunted or scarred by this experience. And secondly, she thinks that, well, if it's discussed publicly now, and if we show that there's no shame or stigma attached to being the victim of an assault like this, perhaps that might help other people talk about it. So if some positive comes out of it, that can only be a good thing.
It's a really interesting book. The Inside Story of the Monarchy and 10 Downing Street is the subtitle, Power and the Palace. And it looks at that relationship between the monarch and politics. And what is really interesting is, I think the hero of the book is clearly the late Queen Elizabeth II.
Very much so.
And what you talk about is how, back in the 19th century, Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth's father, George VI, were quite involved and engaged and intervened in politics. And what the late Queen decided to do was that in order for her to be the head of the nation, she had to be head of the whole nation, and therefore she deliberately decided that she should always be engaged and informed and advising, but always above party politics. And that is really where the monarchy has ended up today.
Yeah, that's extreme. That's exactly right. And also it's very important because I think, in a way, she's helped save the monarchy this way, because a lot of other countries over the course of the last 100 years or so have lost their monarchies. But by removing it from politics, she's ensured that the monarchy has remained a unifying force, and that's very important.
And to declare an interest, I talked to you for the book because I was involved in the conversations which with George Osborne when he was the Chancellor, and I was the Shadow Chancellor, about the financial settlement which was made between the government and the palace, the monarchy. And one of the things you say in the book, I mean, there's a debate about whether that was too generous to the monarchy, but the point was that that financial deal was necessary to secure the future of the monarchy. In a way, the financial deal was more important than having views on political debates of the day.
Yep, and what was interesting about that financial settlement was the government thought at the last moment they'd possibly been a bit too generous, and they tried to row back on it, and they rang up the palace. And the palace, in the words of the Treasury, played hardball and refused to budge. They refused to drop the price.
Too late.
If the Queen never got involved in politics, how come we got this headline in The Sun from 2016 at the time of the referendum on leaving the EU? Queen backs Brexit.
That was a very controversial headline. And if you remember, not only was there a row about how the story came out, I think you remember that Nick Clegg accused Michael Gove of leaking it. It was based on a conversation that happened a few years earlier at a lunch at Windsor Castle. But The Sun had its knuckles rapped by the press regulator because they said the headline was not justified by the words in the story. And
so did she back Brexit or did she back Remain?
I think she backed Remain. Because I spoke to a minister who said that he had a conversation with the Queen around the time of the referendum, and she said, I don't think we should leave the EU.
Ooh.
Better the devil you know.
Wow. So interesting this, though, isn't it? Because, as you say, to become the head of the nation, you have to be for all. But actually, in our polarised society today, it's quite hard to be in the centre ground. And, quite a lot of people now saying Charles, his support for diversity, for, he's too woke. Is he, his support for the environment, too woke? Is it possible, do you think, in the 21st century for the monarchy, for King Charles, to stay above politics as his mother did?
It's much harder than it was. The Queen carried off a brilliant trick. She never gave any interviews. She never gave her opinions away, although, of course, as we see, she had opinions. Charles, he's changed his stance. When he was Prince of Wales, he was very vocal in his opinions. He used to have clashes with ministers. He had clashes with Tory ministers. I mean, Ken Clarke he annoyed famously on one occasion. And he had clashes with the Labour government. There was very bumpy times with the Blair government. But he's dialed it down since then. And what's interesting is when he acceded to the throne, in his first few speeches, every single time he mentioned the Constitution. And that was him saying, I'm going to be a good constitutional monarch.
Well, Power in the Palace, Valentine Lotes, out in the next couple of days. Lots of juicy nuggets, what the royals really think. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.